Hello and welcome to the Long Talk here on New Zealand Sports Radio. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be giving you an interview today, and it's an exciting one today. We have got Bowls New Zealand online with Chris Lander. How are you doing, sir?
G'day, Paul. How are you? I'm well.
Good. And obviously we've got a lot to unpack because during this COVID-19, you guys have been in the news around your greens and stuff. But before we get into all that, how did you get into bowls?
Well, I've been in bowls a couple of years only. The only involvement my family has had in playing the game comes from my maternal grandparents and from my father, who have both been playing for ever, basically. But I haven't played the game, and I'm just starting to get into playing it now. But I've been working with Bowls New Zealand for about almost exactly 2 years, actually. And the way I got into it was that my association with Mark Cameron, who's our CEO, was one that we established when we were both working in cricket. And Mark gave me a shout early 2018 when I was finishing a contractual role with New Zealand Cricket, and asked me if I'd like to help him out with an Australasian event that we were hosting in Wellington, which is my hometown. And obviously the rest of the gang are in Auckland. So he needed someone on the ground for, I think it was a couple of months, I can't remember exactly, to assist us to run the Bowls Premier League event, which is an Australian tournament, but we hosted one of the two tournaments that was hosted in that year, and indeed the following year. And that was hosted at the Nine Eye Bowling Club, which was pretty fresh off the line in terms of its facilities. It had only recently been established as a first-class indoor facility. And so I had a couple of months working with that club and with the people who were helping us to deliver the event, namely Sky Television, Bowls Australia, our own people, obviously, and really enjoyed it. It was a refreshing break from the experiences that I'd had from cricket. Not that they were bad, but it was certainly good to be back in the grassroots space and working in clubs rather than dealing at a very high level with international events, etc., albeit this one obviously was an Australasian event. But yeah, that's what got me into it, and we delivered that event, and it finished around about now, 2 years ago. I think it was probably next week in real time, but yeah, essentially 2 years ago we finished that event. Went very well, and then Mark gave me another call and asked me if I wouldn't mind joining him. I think it was August of that year, to work on a number of things that we had going on at the time, and he was keen to have some support at senior management level, which I was delighted to give him. And that turned into a full-time position 1st of May last year. So that's nearly 12 months that I've been in a full-time role as the general manager of clubs and community for Bowls.
So I guess you're actually a professional sports administrator then, rather than someone who's sort of come through the grassroots of the sport.
That's right.
Which other sports have you worked in?
Sure. Mainly cricket, to be honest. Started off in 1997 in a club cricket manager's role with Auckland Cricket. Was with them for 13 years. Moved to Napier to get out of Auckland. Spent 2 years there running a rugby club. And that was a lot of fun. Napier Pirates Rugby Club. Really enjoyed that. And then moved to Wellington in 2013 and took on a role with Cricket World Cup, which I worked on in two roles for 2 years. And then followed that up with a 18-month, 15-month, something like that, stint at Central Districts Cricket as an interim CEO for them. And then another cricket role for about 15 months again, I think it was, maybe 16, which was the Under-19 World Cup, which New Zealand Cricket hosted in 2018, January 2018. And it was at the end of that Mark contacted me and said, would I help him out with this Bowls gig? And here we are. So that's 23 years in a bit of a hurry, but yeah, that's basically what I've done.
You've got experience of managing grassroots with the rugby club. You've got experience of managing multiple clubs. You've also got experience of the Cricket World Cup is one of the biggest global events around. It's not quite as big as, say, it's not quite on the same level as Olympics and Rugby World Cup, but it's the next level down. As far as numbers go,
as far as numbers go, it's not as big as FIFA, obviously, and it's not as big as the Olympics. I'm not sure what the numbers are around it and Rugby World Cup, but given India's involvement in cricket, it would arguably be bigger than Rugby World Cup. It was a fantastic event to be involved in. Really enjoyed that. But it all goes pretty quickly when you've only got that was a 12-month gig with them and a 11 or 10-month gig delivering the qualifying tournament, which ultimately put Scotland and UAE through to the main draw. And New Zealand Cricket hosted that at late notice, which was my role to project manage that event, with an awful lot of help, I have to say, from the Cricket World Cup staff that we had in Wellington, and a big staff in Melbourne as well. Obviously, that was a bi-nation hosting event. But yeah, it was all over pretty quickly, and here we are. What was that? It doesn't seem like 5 years ago, but it was. So yeah.
I really got that. Wow, because I remember going to two games at Eden Park, and look, the public response to that Cricket World Cup was all positive. So well done in running that. Congratulations. That was you did a very good job.
Yeah, look, we were very pleased with it. It went really well. It helps when the home team's playing well. That was always a bonus.
Yeah,
and to have the two host countries in the final was magnificent too. So it was great.
So as you say, you've dealt with it there. One of the largest events in the world. Then also the big one in the under-20s, and then you've managed all those cricket clubs up and down in Central. So you say coming back into bowls, you found it's much. You don't have the same level of exposure. There's not the same money in the game in the sport, but it's a more community owned, more community feel about it. Very
much a community game. We obviously have a high performance program, and we have some fantastic players that are, in the medals often when they're going to world events, be they Commonwealth Games or Trans-Tasman or World Championships or whatever. We've got some really high class players and people like Joe Edwards and Gary Lawson and Caitlin Inch and Shannon McElroy and various others who's, probably grumpy I haven't mentioned their names, but we go all right. And we've in recent times put together a really good high performance program, which all of the players are now buying into, along with their coaching support staff. And you're right, we're doing this. I wouldn't say we're doing it on a shoestring, but we certainly don't have anything like the budget that a rugby or a cricket or a netball even in this country would have. But we make it work, and it's a lot of fun. The role that I'm in is very much based around the grassroots of the game. The general manager of clubs and communities role is just that, to look after the 478 clubs that we have in this country from top to bottom. And there's 27 regional centres who are in various guises throughout the country. We've got some that are just run literally off a dining room table at home, and others that have got offices and staff and so forth. So it's really nice to be back in that sort of coalface space, where we're talking to the people that are delivering the game every single day of every single season, and trying to get alongside them and let them know that we're here to be adding value rather than just, there for a top 2% in a high performance space.
But in that high performance space, it's not your space, but in that high performance space, do you have a bit like Cycling New Zealand have a centre in one place, like they're centred in Cambridge, or is it, or are they spread around the country and it's done more remotely with temporary camps when they work together? Yeah, very much so, the latter. We've got players that are based in all cities in this country, and some that are based in Australia as well, who are, I wouldn't say they're more professional because that's unfair to those that are here, but they're paid. A lot of those people are paid to be playing and coaching the game in Australia, where we don't have the budgets for that here. So our high performance squads, male and female, and development squads below them are very much scattered around the country. So yeah, we try and bring them together on several occasions through the year, be that during season or off season. And depending on what it is that we've got coming up next and where that might be, we try and tailor our placement of those camps to suit wherever the next big event might be. So, if it's going to be in the UK, then we'll be playing on greens that are a bit slower than if our next event is on the Gold Coast, for example, where the greens are a lot faster. So there'll be some discussion between the high performance, people, be they
key players, coaches, and our management as to exactly how that will play out. But yeah, you're right. It's not my space, so I don't want to get too deep into covering it off. I'm sure you can have a good conversation with Kaushik Patel, who's our high performance manager at some stage, and he'd be delighted to share that with you.
Cool. But that does mean that if they're spread around, the contact between the high performance people and the community people is much closer. They're not sort of sealed off in the same way that like a cricket team are. They will actually enter local events.
Very much so. I mean, the key part of their program for a year is to be involved in centre events and in national events that are played around the country against, players of lesser ability, but still of a high standard. And that's the beauty with bowls. You can not only can you play it from cradle to grave, but you can upset a champion every now and then, and indeed play on the same green through quirk of the draw against a world champion. Joe Edwards and Shannon McElroy went into very recent tournaments just playing against rank and file bowlers, where you don't see that in cricket or tennis or rugby or anything. Well, you do a little bit in rugby, I guess, in club cricket, and maybe a little bit in club cricket, but it's very rare those high performance players are involved at that level. And certainly when you get up into the sort of world champion of tennis, you wouldn't see Roger Federer playing in a local event and being drawn against whoever it might be, me or you for that matter. We happen to enter the draw and get the bad draw. So look, it's fantastic, and the community has very much always been that way. They have a real affinity towards everybody, and there's rivalries, of course, between clubs and centres and so forth, but the general overview of all of these big events that we do have is that they are very much a celebration of the game and an opportunity to renew friendships with, people that you haven't seen for a while because they live at the other end of the country or offshore or, whatever it might be. So, yeah, look, it's an exciting space to be in. And as I say, what we're trying to do is provide good opportunities for those players to enjoy their game, but not get in the way of them enjoying it, and try and add value to the clubs and the people that are playing in those clubs rather than, just drawing off it and making it hard for them. So
you're I guess, I'm assuming you're a summer sport, obviously not something to be done in the rain and things. Did you got through most of your season before the lockdown happened? Have you lost we
did.
Tournaments?
We did lose a couple of events, and indeed, while we are a summer sport, you're absolutely right. With the advent of a number of indoor facilities around the country, some older than others, and covered rather than indoor, if you like, where we've got roofs and no walls, there is an opportunity now to play beyond our traditional summer season, and start a bit earlier as well. So the events that we lost were some in March and April that were national events, including a national interclub event that we were reinstating for the first time this year after a few years missing, and our national intercentre event, which is the representatives of each region, be that Manawatu, Wellington, Canterbury, Southland, whatever it might be.
So kind of
27 of those.
A provincial tournament kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. And we bring them all together for 4 days and figure out who first of all, who the best 16 are, and then we whittle away at that to get down to 2 in men's and women's format. So that's a big event for us, and we were, within days of staging that when we went into lockdown. So it was a disappointment to a lot of people, but, there's bigger things to worry about than games of bowls when this sort of stuff's going on. So we lost those 2 events, and we cancelled the secondary schools, or postponed the secondary schools tournament, which was to be held recently in Auckland. I think I can't remember exactly what the dates were, but that we're hoping to stage that again in December. So that'll actually have a 2020 and a 2021 event. But the rest of those we expect now will be cancelled, and we'll just roll on to the next season. And our Champion of Champion events, which are played in July over longer weekends, Friday through Sunday, where players who have become the singles or pairs or whatever it might be champion of their region get to play against their counterparts from other parts of the country across a 2 or 3 day weekend. And that's prestigious, but again, difficult to stage that when we don't know some of the champions already. Yep. And so for that reason, we've decided that we will postpone, or indeed probably cancel the July events and just kick on to the new season, which will start in earnest probably November, if we can get clear of this horrible problem we've got at the moment.
So you mentioned you've got some like 400 odd clubs. So how many have got access to indoor facilities or covered facilities?
Of the 470, that's a really good question. I think of the 478 that we've got, there's probably only about 15 that would have a covered or indoor facility that they would genuinely be able to play the form of bowls we're talking about on a 36-metre square green.
Mm-hmm.
Some have got indoor capability and smaller, shorter greens, but maybe 15, something like that. But it's growing, that number. And of course, those that have a facility like that in their city, then they do have access to that. So the big ones that have come in recent times, Nainai I mentioned, obviously that can feed everyone from Wairarapa, Kapiti, even Manawatu, Wellington region. So there's a lot of clubs in that space that can get in there and use that if they wish to, just for fun or for events. Obviously that's something they need to sort out with Nainai, but it's there and can be used. And indeed, we've used it, as I said at the top of this interview, around the Australasian event that we had there a couple of times in the last 2 years. And then Orewa in Auckland and Remuera in Auckland have in the last 12 months established covered greens. There's been a covered green in Invercargill for a number of years. There's a couple in Hamilton, Waikato, and plans just about everywhere else in the country for this sort of thing to happen, within the next 5 to 10 years. Clearly, there's going to be some funding issues off the back of what we're experiencing right now that may slow some of that progress down. But it's still very much a way we think we can future-proof the game, because the game is becoming more and more a game for everyone rather than just for those chosen few members that play. There's an awful lot of corporate people and an awful lot of people who just want to have a bit of fun and come and play the game without feeling like they have to be tied to an enormous club membership that's going to draw them into regional events and so forth. It's about participation for us, and we're up into about 130,000 people that have experienced bowls in the last 12 months, which is a big number. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're really thrilled about that, and so you're very keen to establish.
You're trying to establish things a bit like sort of white collar boxing, but white collar bowls and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess you could argue that. I mean, we just, what we want to do is to show people how available the game is, how much fun it is. Doesn't matter whether you're 15 or even 10 years old or 100 years old. You can still play this if you can stand up or sit in a wheelchair and play against people that are not that. They're 40 or 50 and able-bodied or reasonably able-bodied, having come out of a career in sport, whether that's been a rugby or a cricket or whatever, and their bones are starting to give up a wee bit on the contact that they've had in those codes, and this just gives them an opportunity to get out and have some fun and retain that competitive edge with some mates, and go inside and have a counter meal and a beer and go home. It really is an opportunity that we think we can make some good gains with in the next 2 to 4 years, and especially off the back of this COVID-19 thing, there will be plenty of people looking for something to do, which they can't do on a rugby field or a cricket field or whatever, just because of the impact that this thing's going to have. So we've got a job to do to sell that to people, but we're hopeful that we can certainly make some good inroads for that and strengthen our clubs in the process of doing so.
Talking about that accessibility side of things, you said anyone basically who can sort of pick up a box. When I've gone 10-pin bowling, they have like little ramps for kids to use. Do you have that sort of facility as well for sort of less abled or for challenging?
Absolutely. People? Yeah. You can use what they call a lifter, so you can grab the bowl with a if you think about a short walking stick with a trigger on it that can just grab the bowl, and you just turn it into a pendulum for yourself, so that you don't have to bend down to pick it up. You don't have to bend down to deliver the bowl, and that's a perfectly legitimate way of playing the game. It's considered as part of World Bowls equipment for someone that has got a fused back or whatever it might be that prevents them from doing that. And ditto, as long as the wheelchair's got the right wheels and isn't going to eat into a green and damage it, then you can play when you're sitting down as well. And the size of bowls is the other thing. So a child of 8 or 9 or 10 with small hands is going to need a smaller bowl than someone who's got a hand like a baseball mitt. So yeah, they range from size 0, which is the smallest, right up to size 5, and the weights vary obviously based on the size of the bowl as well. And our clubs are reasonably well equipped to cope with that, and certainly we'll be working pretty hard to make sure they are, especially for those that are going to be taking on an opportunity of pushing this game out there on a regular basis to rank and file rather than the usual membership.
Yeah, and people who want to have a go, I mean, the clubs have bowls that they can use. You don't have to own your own set of bowls, do you?
No, not at all. Absolutely, they do. And again, that's a piece that we're very keen to establish with a number of our clubs to make sure that not only do they have those bowls, but they've got a little bit of educational opportunity for people that are coming into the place and want to understand a bit about it. The beauty of bowls is that a number of our players, probably more than 75%, have got a demographic of 70 plus years of age. So in a lot of cases, these people have got a lot of time on their hands, and they love being able to tell people what a wonderful game it is that they're considering becoming part of. And so that sort of coach/volunteer role that has been difficult for a lot of other clubs because they're time poor, their administrators are time poor. That's not necessarily the case with our demographic and our administrative strength. There's a lot of people that are, in their 70s and even in their 80s that are still very able-bodied, but in a lot of cases also are quite lonely. They're at home either on their own or with one other person. And the fact that the bowling club is there to give them an opportunity to engage with the community and if they can, encourage people to play the game and get as much of enjoyment out of it as they have for the last 30, 40, 50 years, then they'll take that opportunity. What we have to do as Bowls New Zealand is to encourage that and to make sure they've got the resources to be able to achieve it.
Oh yeah, I mean there's multiple bunch of things to unpack in there, but you talk about being part of the community, and it really is. I mean, I've got in-laws who live in the Coromandel, in one of the small towns around there, and yeah, it's like the fishing club. The bowls club is an integral part of the community where people catch up and see each other. Just because you have a summer season of playing doesn't mean it's not open on Friday afternoons or on evenings or at the weekends during the off season as well. I mean, these are hubs where people meet, have a drink, have a bite.
Very much so. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And they are, and especially as you say, in those smaller communities where there aren't the greater opportunities for these sort of meeting places, the bowling club, the fishing club, the football club, whatever it might be, do become very, very crucial in terms of just a source of engagement for people. And of course, again, speaking to the demographic that we have, in a lot of cases, 75 and 80-year-olds, especially women, and I don't want to generalise here, don't necessarily want to go into a noisy pub which is full of 30-year-olds that have just watched a Super 15 rugby game or whatever it might be. And so a bowling club or a quieter space is a much better option. And, you're right, you don't need to be playing the game in order to enjoy the facilities.
And one of those things you talk about your demographics. One of the things I have come across, and it's coming across in the way you're saying about sort of improving all the facilities, is that whilst bowls might have an image of having an older demographic, from an administration point of view, you guys are one of the more, having talked to several now, very dynamic in that you're very quick to pick up on opportunities. You can see you are in a growth stage of the sport, seeing that you've got opportunities, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Mark Cameron's been in this role for 4 years now, I think, or nearly 4 years. And there have been a number of things that he's wanted to implement to make some change in the way that the game is seen by New Zealanders and the way that people engage with the game. And that includes getting them to play it, but also includes just creating an interest in the game for those that wish to understand who's doing well in it and who some of the people that are involved in it might be. And we've still got some work to do in that space around trying to encourage, not necessarily creating household names, but, having personalities in the game that are capable of selling it well without doing the hard sell, if you like. They're just, good people that are talking to other people and saying, hey, look, this is a lot of fun. You want to come and give it a crack. And here's how we play it, whether it be at a Com Games level or just in a club scenario. And look, I think there's really great opportunities for that, definitely.
Now, obviously, there are different surfaces you play on. You talked about the grass. Indoors, clearly you're on a carpet, I believe, rather than rather than sitting in grass. Having looked over the fence at a couple of clubs, there's other types of sort of all-weather pitches as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so the greens, natural greens, we've got, I want to say about 450 of those in the country. They are weed rather than grass per se, but they are a natural surface. and there's 3 or 4 different types of weed, and in some cases they're hybrids of 2 of those in the same green. They are clearly a technical issue for our greenkeepers to take care of, and depending on where you are in the country and how much wind you have and how much rain you have and how much sunshine you have, will dictate, as a rule anyway, which surface you will likely choose to implement and maintain at your club. But the advent of artificial surfaces in the last 20 odd years, I suppose, has allowed clubs to create a surface that doesn't require as much maintenance and does allow a greater amount of involvement or of activity on it. And especially for clubs that maybe, don't have a greenkeeping solution anymore, but still wish to play the game. Clubs that have a great deal of corporate or casual activity, where the players, without wanting to be difficult towards the club, those players are not as familiar with what they should and shouldn't be doing on a green. So what they're wearing on their feet, the way that they're moving up and down the green. So there's not going to be as much damage on an artificial green as there is on a natural green if people are wearing the wrong footwear or running up and down it, or whatever, dropping the bowl on it, or whatever it might be. And I think we've got a couple of hundred artificial greens around the country of different types. There's a number of different suppliers, and as technology changes, the carpets get tighter, more expensive certainly. But there's a number of different weaves that are available from different manufacturers, and it's a bit of a horse for a course.
Are there some dirt or gravel kind of surfaces as well, or not?
No, that's pretty much it. There will obviously, underneath an artificial, and indeed under a natural, you'll have a drainage requirement. So there'll be scoria, or there'll be lime, or there'll be whatever to give you a solid base that does hold water.
I might have seen a couple of greens under development and thought that was
under development. Yeah, very much so. Yep, absolutely. And indeed, if they've been scarified or going under massive maintenance, they may well be stripped right back and regrown and reseeded. So that can definitely happen.
Now, one of the big talks was, I say, about looking after these greens. Now, for me, a lawn, you just cut it, right? So if it's left to grow for a couple of weeks, so what? You just cut it back down to the same level, and it's still a lawn. Yep. Looking at, but reading the reports that things like golf greens and also your bowling greens, they can't just be left to grow for a while and cut back. They do require quite a lot of maintenance. Is that true?
Yeah, I think ongoing maintenance is the trick to it, and it's less about the length of leaf or natural surface growth than it is about maintaining any problem you might get through heat and wind and rain and so forth, creating disease and putting mildew and molds and various other things we don't want on the green in there. And if you can't attend to that quickly, then it can become a very big problem quite quickly. And so the ability to maintain it, our essential maintenance on the green certainly is to mow it, because that means that it's less easy for any wind-borne disease or gremlins to get caught in the green, but also allows the greenkeeper just to check on problem areas he may have had or she may have had with regard to this particular corner is susceptible to this because there's a tree hanging over it that drops whatever it might be, whether it's pine cones or whatever, and that can create a disease because it holds pine needles in it, and that can impact. So the ability just to keep an eye on things is the imperative, and that was why we were so pleased to get that okay from MBIE the other day, a week ago.
Yeah,
really great.
Yeah, I think you had about 2 weeks where the greens couldn't be looked after.
Yeah, it's probably more like 3 by the time we went. We went. I can't remember exactly, but it was about that. I think we were told on Tuesday last week, which was the day after Easter, obviously, that we're okay to go. And I think that was all but 3 weeks, 19 days maybe, something like that.
Right.
So I haven't heard of any disasters, but I think we might have had we still been in this position now or in a week's time. So yeah, we're very grateful for the acceding to our request, shall we say? Yeah.
The other point we sort of talked about earlier was, that people do go in the clubhouse all year round. And obviously, a lot of the clubs, will make will have a lot of their income be basically over the bar or through food served. How are your clubs coping with this lockdown and having like a month? Well, it's going to be probably closer to 2 months, I guess, by the end of this at least, of that lack of income. Do you foresee any problems in that kind of space?
Yes, we do. But as you said a little earlier on, we are towards the end of our season. And so in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, our bowling clubs would have been shutting down around about now anyway, end of April, and not quite mothballing, but certainly going into a mild form of hiatus, shall we say, until September, October. So the costs that would be expected to be met through that period are a lot less than they would be during a playing season, obviously, because you're not having to, look after the people that are coming in and out and restocking your bar and paying your staff to man the bar if that's what you do and all these sorts of things. So there will be a wee bit of a lull period where we have an opportunity to find out exactly how our clubs are going to cope. A number of them will be fine. They have good reserves and they're in good shape in terms of being able to just manage that storm or weather that storm. Others are affiliated with cosmopolitan clubs, RSAs, grander scale facilities, and they will, operate in the same way that they have previously at certain times, with other things going on like darts and billiards and snooker and so forth that happen in there from sporting perspective. And there's also other uses of a lot of these club rooms for non-sporting activity, dance groups and bingo hall sort of stuff and Rotary Club meetings and all that sort of stuff. So those activities will still carry on within the legislation that allows it. But once we get to the start of the season, I think the big problem will be the ability to generate revenue through gaming machine funding, which a lot of our clubs obviously, I wouldn't say they rely on, but they certainly benefit from the support of. And it's realistic that that's going to be harder to get in the next wee while, because there's going to be, months of very little activity on those machines in the next wee while. So we have to think about how we cope with that. Sadly, Bowls New Zealand is not in a position with, oodles of money in the bank to be able to, bankroll everyone through this. But we hope that we can provide some good advice and opportunities for them to just think a bit about how they might change the way they're doing things, really, and get a bit smarter with the way that they're running their place, and whether it needs to be open all of the time, and if it is, what they can do to engender more people to come through it, etc., etc. So we're going to hopefully put together some things there that we can talk to our clubs about in the near future. We're not there yet, but some events hopefully that can hopefully make it a bit easier for them than it might otherwise be. But yes, it's an issue. We don't know how big yet, but we're not expecting it to be a simple solution either.
Right. You mentioned in there or earlier on about the schools championships that you had to postpone. So how many schools are you in schools, and are you in many primary schools as well, or is it just secondary schools that you're kind of in at the moment?
Generally, it's secondary schools, and generally it is a relationship between the club and potentially the centre and those schools. Some of them will literally border a school and will have a very tight relationship with that school. Others will have relationships through people. So, parents or grandparents that play in the club that have got an interest in seeing these kids having an opportunity. Teachers who are very keen to ensure that a lot of their players or a lot of their kids have a sport available to them that is one they can play. I mean, as you'd appreciate, there's plenty of athletes, inverted commas, out there, but there's also a lot of kids that aren't athletes in the pure sense of the word. They're not the faster, stronger, bigger type people. And so those that are not as strong, not as social in a lot of cases, they're just sort of a bit reticent when they're sort of working in a group. But bowls is a game that lends itself nicely to anyone. I mean, you can be 25 stone or 7 stone and play against each other, and no one has an advantage, apart from being good at it or otherwise. So it's not the misfits by any means. It's just an opportunity for kids that haven't found their liking in a be it a team sport or an individual sport like tennis, or the traditional stuff like cricket, rugby, football, whatever it might be, hockey, tennis, they can have a go at this and find that actually I can do this and I'm quite enjoying it. And that's why we're finding that we've now got, I think there were 100 and something teams in the secondary schools team last year, tournament last year. I'm not sure what the entries looked like for this year. It was going to be hosted by Auckland Bowls, but we are hoping that we can host that event in December. And if we can have those sort of numbers again, that'd be great. What we did manage to do this year, which hasn't been the case previously, was to include it in the New Zealand secondary school sports calendar. So it was an official event in their sporting year. And so by having that in the calendar, it allowed its space to exist for anyone to be involved, rather than it crossing swords with another event, if you like. So, the teachers could look at it and say, okay, that doesn't clash with canoeing, tennis, orienteering, whatever it might be. We can get our kids playing this thing. Let's get down there and, see who wants to do it. So
one of the other things that we've had, you mentioned there is, that people with different athletic abilities can compete equally, because, it's a skills-based sport as opposed to an athletics-based sport, which is what makes it, makes it rare amongst sports sporting codes, to be honest. Let's be honest, it's
almost unique, I think. I mean, you've got to go a long way to find one that is as easy for people to play against anyone else. Standing, sitting, old, young, big, small, whatever it is, male, female. Anyone can play this thing as long as you can pick a bowl up or use something to pick a bowl up and send it down the other end. We've got people that are blind playing the game. We've got people that are deaf playing the game. It really is a game for all New Zealanders, really.
So, how do you? If I've heard of blind football where they have a bell or inside the ball, how does it work with bowls?
So with bowls, and I'm not an expert, but I have seen a little bit of it, because we included for the first time in our national singles and pairs event in Christchurch this year, we included disabled players, be they sight impaired or physically disabled. And what the blind players do, and there's a level, and I can't remember exactly, I think there's 4 levels of sight impairment that are world acknowledged, if you like. So at Commonwealth Games level, you are level 1, 2, 3 or 4. And I think I'm right in saying that if you're level 4, I can't remember which way around it is, but people that understand the game will forgive me for not remembering this, but regardless, it's 4 levels. Level 1, let's say it's level 1, is no sight at all. You might as well have a blindfold on. What they do, each of these players, whether they're on levels 1, 2, 3 or 4, have what they call a director, which is a you or a me that stand with them and help them understand where they are in relation to the kitty at the other end of the green. Yep. They use clock face terminology to let them know where they need to deliver that bowl. And they use a string down the centre of the green from before the first bowl is delivered, so that the player can touch and find out where they are in terms of their line. Right. And from there, with the clock face instruction, this is very basic that I'm giving you here, the clock face instruction will allow that player to deliver the bowl to 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever it might be. And also, of course, the length. So the length of the kitty would be, you got a long jack, which is, 4 meters off the end of the green rather than a closer one. And the director provides all of that information. Now, some of the players that have got sight impairment have got some vision, tunnel vision or peripheral vision only, lack of peripheral vision, blurry vision, light, dark, rather than just black. And they are graduated down depending on, which level they play in. But that's how they do it. And you'd be amazed how good they are. It's extraordinary.
So effectively, we're talking about they use the exact same equipment as everybody else. They just have someone describe it. They have an indicator as to which as to where they're standing, say that central line, and everything else is just described to them as to how they should, as to where they need to aim for, and they can visualize that in their mind, and off they go. Wow, that's very impressive.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. So they're lined up on the mat. Obviously, the director assists them to literally point the right way.
Yep.
And once they're there and they can touch the string and they understand through technique as much as anything else in practice, they understand what they're aiming at. And like anyone, some of them are good and some of them are not as good, but they can all play it. And then we've got the disabled community, who are people who have got, wheelchair bound, limbs missing, mental, or what's the word I'm looking for? Not mentally impaired necessarily, but say a cerebral palsy type scenario where, mentally they're absolutely fine, but their body is unable to deliver the bowl as smoothly as one of our top end high performance players might be that isn't physically disabled.
Yep.
But it's absolutely amazing how well these players can play, and indeed compete against able-bodied players. That's the other cool thing about it. And we saw that in our Bowls 3-5 event. Some people will have seen this on TV last year, where we had the Parajacks, we called them, our disabled national team, a selection of players from there who were playing in a competition with able-bodied people. It was a great opportunity for us to showcase just exactly how available this game is to everybody.
Oh, and it's great that they all take, say, you have all the championships together at the same time. So from a community point of view, you can all mix together. If you're all playing with the same bowls, with the same jacks, it's so the challenges are very similar. You can all discuss and play at a similar level.
Absolutely, and sorry, go on.
No, I was going to go and just say that we've already said that people different can compete. So I was going to say you do have men's and ladies. It's not you're not a co-ed or whatever.
No, or both really. We have men's and women's events, and we have mixed events as well. So just depending on what the format of any particular tournament or game might be. At our national tournaments this year, the coming season, we're going to introduce a mixed pairs event to our national fours competition. So in the normal course of events, our national fours event would carry a men's section and a women's section, and it will do that again. But at the end of that fours competition, we'll have, I think it's a 3-day event that we've pushed into the draft calendar, where it'll be a fours event again, but it will be 2 men and 2 women as a team. And they will play against another 2 men and another 2 women. So that mixed opportunity is there, not just in fours, but in pairs and in triples. And indeed in Bowls 3-5, TV event that I was mentioning a minute ago, we had a minimum of 1 male and 1 female in each team. So you might have 2 women and 1 guy, or 2 guys and 1 female playing in a team of 3. And that was the only way you could enter this event. You had to have a mixed event. So again, it was just an opportunity to show that it's not about strength and how far you can hit a shot put or a javelin, or how high you can jump or whatever it is. It's just about technique and getting the ball down the other end of the green. And you'd appreciate that men and women approach the game a lot of the time in a very similar way, and in others they have a very different approach. They're not quite as aggressive in general terms. The female players don't tend to drive as much, for example. But in essence, it's just the same game being played. So it's very involved, or involving, I should say. Yeah.
Cool. So how do people find a club? I guess if they want to get involved and try it out.
Well, I guess the first prize there is to go to our website, bowlsnewzealand.co.nz. We're in the process of tidying up exactly how people can locate a club, but at the moment you can certainly go there. You'll find at the top of our menu options that there is a locate a club option, and then you just plug in where you are, and that'll show you which clubs are available and a link to each of those clubs. We are just tidying that up right now, so hopefully by the beginning of next season we'll be in a position where we can really make it easy for people to find not only a bowling club, but to find out what that club offers in the way of, whether it be coaching or social bowls or competitive bowls or, men's, women's, kids, whatever it might be. So that's a work in progress for us, but definitely they can find that on our website, or just in fact jump on a computer and Google bowling clubs in my area, and you'll get a pretty decent look at that. The only trick there, obviously, is that indoor bowls and 10-pin bowling might pop up under a Google search as well, whereas on our website you'll just get a pure bowling club response.
So hang on, so indoor bowls.
So indoor bowls is a different game altogether. If you forget about, for a moment, forget about what we would call, for the sake of this conversation, outdoor bowls.
Mm-hmm.
You can play that indoors, but only on a green that is about the same size as an outdoor green. So a big indoor facility, basically 40 meters square or thereabouts, as far as the green goes. Whereas indoor bowls per se, in inverted commas, as a sport, is played in a hall with multiple rolls of carpet, if you like, that are, and I may be getting this wrong, but I think 14 meters long and only the width of a single bed. Couple of meters of that. Not even that, probably 1.5 meters, something like that. And played kneeling on the floor with bowls that are not as big as, an outdoor bowling competition would involve. But the theory is the same. The bowls have a bias, there's a kitty, there's different rules, obviously, because when you've got 40 or 50 different games going on in the same hall, you don't want people driving and, having things spear off into the next game and whacking someone on the ankle. But indoor bowls certainly has a lot of similarities with outdoor bowls, and indeed a great cross-pollination of players between the two competitions, or the two sports or codes. And indeed,
but it's not administrated by you guys. There's a separate Indoor Bowls New Zealand, or whatever.
Yes, there is. That's right. Having said that, we're in the process of just talking with Indoor Bowls New Zealand about helping them with some of the work that they need to do in the administrative space that we also do. And, there's a lot that we can achieve together, because they still need to move people around the country. They still need to make bookings. They still need to have an AGM. They still need to, do all of these things. And there's a lot that we can achieve with them, and that's something we're working on with them right now.
Oh, that's great to hear, because and it does appear that sport in New Zealand seems to be more collaborative than I've seen it in some other countries, where it can be basically not get on with each other at all. But I was talking to someone the other day about mountain biking and road biking. Now, they are very different audiences and different people. You tend to do one or the other, but at an administration level, they seem to be they're on the same website. They seem to work together. So yeah, it's good to see that collaboration between the two sports, which could easily have turned into a competition to try and grab as many players as possible.
Yeah, that's right. I think the difference, apart from the size of the bowls and the fact that you play it indoors all of the time, the major difference between indoor bowls and outdoor bowls is that there isn't a club facility for indoor bowls. They tend to hire facilities, so a community hall or, whatever it might be, gymnasium, that they will then utilise for their club. There are clubs, but they don't necessarily have a clubhouse as our bowling clubs do. So that's a marked point of difference between them. I think the point you raise is right, though, around the way that our sports generally operate and are pretty collaborative. And it's about scale, really. I mean, there's only 4 or 5 million people in this country. And, if you have a look at any sport, apart from a few that have got a really huge number of people playing and being invested in the game, it's just a matter of trying to make it work, as you say, for bikes or swimming, or you would expect that, I don't know, rowing or something like that. There's a whole lot of different ways you can row a boat down a lake, but Rowing New Zealand don't have canoeing and kayaking New Zealand and all this sort of stuff. They just, they are one entity. Yep. Whereas in other countries, I expect that, that's not the case, because they've got economies, a greater scale of people that are playing, and therefore they can justify a bigger, wider administrative base. So look, it's practical, isn't it? If we can work with indoor bowls, and we're working in a lot of cases with similar and the same people, then we can share from each other as well, and learn from each other, and potentially gain sponsors together, etc., etc. So that's, we haven't got underway with that yet, but we're about to, we hope, and away we go, and we'll see where it ends up.
Oh, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Is there anything else that that I've kind of missed, or that you'd like to say about bowls?
Oh, I think the key message that we're trying to get out there right now is that it is a game for everyone, and there are very few people that play it and don't enjoy it, even if it's just a Christmas function for the 25 people in the office or whatever it might be. It's one of the few games where you can come down and everyone's on the same, literally on a level playing field. It's not like, oh, I can't play golf or I can't, shoot hoops in a basketball court. If you've got people in an office and there's a business that's also got, a factory and a all the rest of it. So you've got a real cross section of the community. All of those people, just about guaranteed, can play bowls, and they can play against each other and be competitive with each other, more or less. There's not too many other codes that you can do that with, and it's a really cost-effective option for businesses and social groups and so forth to just come and have some fun with. So whether it's a Christmas function or a 40th birthday or a 50th wedding anniversary or whatever it is, it's tailor-made for just giving people a bit of fun rather than just sitting around on a seat and eating and drinking. You can do that too, but you can do that after you've had a game.
Well, I'm probably not on the on the first green, but on some of the artificial greens, I'm sure that having you can have a nice chili bin at each end as well to have.
Oh yeah, very definitely. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a very community-focused social experience, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's addictive, and there's a number of people who said, "Oh God, I wish I'd taken it up 20 years ago." The beauty with this is you don't have to. You can take it up now and play it until you drop, because it's a game that can be played, as I say, from cradle to grave. My dad's been playing since he was younger than me, in his 40s, I think he was when he started, and he's now nearly 90 and he's still playing. So there's not too many sports, that you can do that with and remain competitive. So it's a bit special, and we're very proud of the game, and we want to make sure people can get the opportunity to really enjoy it.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. Folks, don't forget to like or subscribe if you're using the podcast or the Facebook page, or hit the bell and all that kind of stuff on YouTube. And coming up, I've got Mike Rogers from the Bay of Plenty Rugby. I've got volleyball in New Zealand. I've got some ex-rugby players. I've got some current rugby coaches as well lined up. So do stick around. There's lots of interesting people still to come on The Long Talk.